Welcome back to CEEN Caribbean News. It's now time for In Depth. Speculations of a potential general election in Jamaica this year have been fueled by both major political parties, the ruling People's National Party PNP and the opposition Jamaica Labour Party JLP, hitting campaign trails hard. And whether elections are called by the end of 2015 or in the new year, the PNP's election build-up has emphasized heavily that the JLP administration left the Jamaican economy on life support, with the island now starting to reaping the rewards restored credibility. But JLP is questioning why they should be held liable when the PNP has been in charge of Jamaica's affairs for most of the island's sovereign life. Here are more details.
The JLP took office in September 2007. By the end of 2011, the economy was in shambles. Their IMF program was abandoned. The country was in a downward spiral. They presided over 14 consecutive quarters of negative growth. Tell them, don't talk to me about growth. Don't talk to me about development. The very important developments that take place in this country did so under People's National Party government. The country's debt ballooned to $1.7 trillion. Approximately 100,000 jobs were lost. Comrades, and that's not all. Because of their conduct, Jamaica was fast becoming a pariah in the community of nations.
That declaration has been a key component of the ruling People's National Party's campaign bid to return to office. As for when that might happen, the Constitution does not require general elections until the end of 2016. However, there are speculations that the Prime Minister, Portia Simpson Miller, may call general elections before the year is out. But the Jamaica Labour Party is rubbishing the PNP's claim, questioning how they could have possibly ruined the country when the PNP, prior to 2007, was in charge of government for 18 consecutive years, and in 2011 they returned to office. General Secretary of the Jamaica Labour Party, Horace Chang, says when the JLP took office, they had inherited a bad situation, and the path of growth the PNP administration continues to sing about was in fact created by the JLP before they demitted office in 2011.
One must understand that much of the systemic problems that the economy faces were coming from the 90s. There's the high debt which was aggravated significantly by the activities of the entire economic program of that time that ran the country into severe indebtedness, which we have not yet been able to reverse or correct, and it could not be done in 4 years. What we did in the 4 years was start the process of improvement in the regulatory framework. We started investment in the basic infrastructure, which is what will provide the foundation for sustainable growth. We indicated clearly and left plans in place for tax administration, pension reform, and had started the process of public service reform. It would have taken time, and we certainly would have proceeded in that direction. This government has made very little attempt at bringing on stream those reforms that are required to really lay the foundation for sustainable economic growth, which is why the country is stagnant, although we are balancing the macroeconomic numbers.
Dr. Chang asserts that the IMF has been able to achieve the macroeconomic numbers purely by increasing taxation and reducing expenditure, which chokes the economy. He contends that sustainable economic growth cannot be achieved by those measures alone, and the government has failed to implement companion measures. Dr. Chang also lambasts the Prime Minister's claim that it was the People's National Party that was solely responsible for the transformation of Jamaica's infrastructure. He says some of the measures the JLP administration implemented for the benefit of the nation's people were discontinued.
In terms of infrastructure, it was the Jamaica Labour Party that started to rebuild our road infrastructure. I agree they have started some of them. They have tried to continue some, not as extensive as we have done. We made major steps in improving our housing stock. We started secondary mortgage market, which has been discontinued. We started major upgrading of informal settlements, which has been discontinued. And we were doing greenfield developments across Jamaica, none of which has even continued, and no new ones started in the 4 years of the People's National Party administration. In terms of water supply, we did the planning and identified the first $500 million, $600 million in fact, to start the recapitalization and development of the Water Commission. While they have continued to spend, and spent quite inefficiently because the contracts they have issued have taken the full 4 years to start.
On Sunday, the Prime Minister promised that $180 million is to be spent on acquiring water trucks as a solution to the country's ongoing water crisis. Dr. Chang says that action by the government is misguided.
It's almost embarrassing. Water trucks cannot solve the water supply problem. The water companies need trucks to supply an emergency situation. But we must have a plan to take piped water to the homes of individuals, and we have enough water. We can afford the capital, and we have the skills required, and we can justify the capital expenditure within the IMF framework. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's embarrassing. I should never have said that, and I think we should take us to task for that.
So what would the JLP do differently? He says if the JLPs return to office, they will simply implement the proposal they drafted before leaving government.
We had looked at the entire water system. We looked at what we have, and we believed that we needed to invest about $2 billion US to bring our water system to the level we wanted to. We, in fact, pretty much identified the first billion US, which would be easy to accommodate in our present scheme of economic activity that is still within the framework of the IMF agreement. When we discussed those targets, we had this extensive discussion with the Inter-American Development Bank. And we started that process. We committed and spent near $600 million US. We contracted some. We signed a loan in the last 2 months of our government of $133 million US. They were not contracted, but the designs and plans were in place so that we could, in fact, bring our water system to an acceptable international standard. Part of that was to reduce non-revenue water from near 65% to about 40%. The contract for non-revenue water in the corporate area alone has taken the government 3.5 years to implement while the money was sitting there in the Bank of Jamaica. That is absolutely embarrassing, and it reflects an inefficient and incompetent administration as far as implementing large infrastructure projects nationally. We can implement the kind of programs in water that will bring water in a reliable manner to over 90% of our urban dwellers and take the rural areas, which is still below 60%, up to about 85%. Above that, the cost will increase and it will take a little more time. But in the next decade, we can bring that our water supply up to that level. If we reduce non-revenue water from 65% to 40%, you may have to reduce the water rate to come to the cash rich.
And responding to the Prime Minister's declaration of 28,000 jobs to be provided to Jamaicans over the next 5 years, Dr. Chang says the announcement is comical.
This section of our presentation is almost laughable. Let's look at it in real terms. We're talking about 28,000 jobs over 5 years. That is under 6,000 jobs per year. We have maybe that number of young people graduating from the University of the West Indies alone. Certainly at tertiary level, we have more than 6,000 graduates in today's Jamaica. And we're not sure the character of those jobs, because if you count the Jeep jobs, they are not really jobs. It's an intellectual dishonest comments to make, because people are working for 2 days or 2 weeks, and sometimes it takes 12 weeks to get paid. Jeep jobs. These are kind of emergency work, which is of value, and while the country is in the economic state it is in, and we have unemployment levels that we have, that kind of work is necessary. But we should not be boasting about it, because they are not real productive jobs in the sense of sustaining people's family and quality of life, because they're working for a normal year at work.
On the topic of health care, he says the amount being proposed by the Prime Minister to overhaul the health care system could never be enough.
$2.5 billion in real terms today is about $20 million US. That is small change for the healthcare service. And I think she mentioning Princess Margaret Hospital to boost up the status of her failing Minister of Health, Ferguson, who has been a disaster as a Minister of Health and is having serious problems in this constituency. This is cheap platform politics at its worst.
Dr. Chang asserts that the JLP stands ready to rescue the country from the clutches of the PNP and already has its strategies in place to take the country forward. He says while the party waits for the announcement of general elections, it is working on its own political structure.